The night was quiet on the edge of the galaxy. Dr. Ethan Hayes sat alone inside the human research base on the planet Rho 9. Outside, the wind howled across the red sand, carrying dust that glowed faintly under the moons. It was another long night of work. Ethan was a man who had forgotten what rest felt like. For months, he had been studying the strange atmosphere of the planet, hoping to find signs of life. But tonight he was tired. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes, and thought maybe he should take a break. Then it happened. A soft knock echoed through the metal corridor. He froze. No one was supposed to be here. The other scientists had left 2 weeks ago after the storms destroyed the main landing zone. No ships had landed since then. He turned toward the door, thinking maybe it was the wind, but then he heard it again. Knock, 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 and slow and weak. Someone or something was out there. Ethan's heart began to beat faster. He stood up, grabbed his flashlight, and walked slowly toward the airlock. His mind raced. Could it be a stranded explorer, or maybe a creature from the surface? He had scanned the area many times. There was no sign of life. Still, the knock came again, softer this time, almost like a cry. He reached for the control panel and pressed the release button. The outer door slid open with a hiss. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of dust and metal. In the doorway stood a small figure. At first, Ethan thought it was a child. She was thin, trembling, and covered in gray dust. But when she lifted her head, he saw her eyes, glowing faint blue in the darkness. Her skin was pale and almost transparent. She looked scared and weak. Ethan took a careful step forward. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly. The little girl looked up at him and whispered, "My mom can't breathe." Ethan blinked, not sure if he had heard her right. "What did you say?" The girl repeated, "My mom, she can't breathe." Her voice shook like she was fighting not to cry. Ethan knelt down to her level. "Where is your mother?" The child pointed toward the desert outside where the storm still howled. Ethan looked out through the dust, nothing but endless sand. "How did you get here?" he asked, but she didn't answer. She held out a small silver capsule. Glowing faintly, it was an oxygen pod, half empty. Ethan realized her species couldn't breathe this planet's air. Her mother must be out there running out of time. He grabbed his medical kit and an oxygen tank. "Stay close to me," he said. The girl nodded silently. Ethan sealed his suit, opened the outer gate, and stepped into the storm. The wind hit him hard, filling the air with red dust. He could barely see 5 feet ahead. The girl led the way. Walking quickly despite her small size, Ethan followed her light steps, his boots sinking into the sand after a few minutes. He saw something half buried in the ground, a crashed shuttle. Its surface was burned and cracked. Smoke still rising from its side, the girl ran toward it, shouting something in a language he didn't understand. Ethan followed her inside the broken door. The smell of burnt metal and ozone filled the air. Inside, lying against the wall, was an alien woman. Her chest rose and fell weakly, her skin dull and her breathing shallow. Her face looked similar to the girl's. The same glowing eyes, the same pale skin. She was dying. Ethan quickly knelt beside her and checked her pulse. It was weak, her breathing slow and uneven. He tried to attach the oxygen mask, but it didn't fit her face. Her biology was different. Her lungs not built like humans. The little girl grabbed his arm, tears streaming down her face. "Please, human doctor, help her," she said. Ethan hesitated. Galactic law was clear. Humans were not allowed to interfere with alien life forms, especially with medical procedures. But how could he stand there and do nothing? He looked at the woman again, then at the girl. He could feel his heart pounding. "All right," he said softly. "I'll help her." He lifted the alien woman carefully into his arms. Her body was light, fragile, as if made of glass. The girl followed close behind, clutching his jacket. Together they made their way back through the storm. The wind screamed around them, lightning flashing across the red clouds. Every step was heavy, every breath was a fight. But Ethan didn't stop. He had made a choice, one that might change everything. As the base came into view through the dust, he whispered to himself, "Hang on, we're almost there." Behind him, the girl looked up at the dark sky. Something moved among the clouds, a faint blue light following them. She said nothing, but her small hand tightened around the oxygen capsule, and as they entered the airlock, a shadow passed across the stars. Something had seen them, something that wasn't human. The base doors sealed behind them with a deep metallic thud. Dr. Ethan Hayes stood in the dim light, breathing hard inside his helmet. Red dust fell from his suit as he carried the alien woman in his arms. The little girl followed close, her glowing eyes filled with fear. Ethan gently placed the woman on the medical bed, his hands trembling slightly. He looked at her face. She was barely breathing, her skin cold, her chest rising and falling in short, painful gasps. He knew she didn't have much time left. The girl gripped the edge of the table, whispering, "Please help her." Her voice was so soft it almost disappeared in the hum of the machines. Ethan nodded. "I'll do everything I can." He pulled off his gloves and scanned the alien's chest with his biomed scanner. The screen flickered, showing strange patterns. Her lungs were different, not made for oxygen, but for something else. Tiny crystals glowed inside her chest cavity. Dim and cracked, they were her breathing organs, filtering gases his scanners couldn't even name, and they were breaking apart. Like glass under pressure, Ethan stared at the screen, feeling a cold chill in his stomach. He had seen alien biology before, but never this. He needed specialized equipment, alien nanotech, or at least a universal respirator. But he had none of that. Only human tools and his stubborn will. He turned to the girl. "What's her name?" The child hesitated, then whispered, "My mother's name is Sarah." Ethan nodded. "Okay, Lyra, listen to me. I'll try to fix her, but you must stay calm." Lyra wiped her tears and nodded quickly. Ethan injected Sarah with a mild stabilizer, a mix that slowed down cellular decay. Her breathing steadied slightly, but the crystals in her chest still glowed weakly. He needed to give her clean air, the kind her species could use. He connected tubes from his oxygen supply to the air filter and began adjusting the gas levels. He guessed mixing nitrogen, trace argon, and a small dose of xenon. He didn't know if it would help or kill her, but doing nothing would kill her faster. For a moment, the monitor beeped softly. Sarah's breathing deepened, her chest moving smoother. Ethan let out a breath of relief. But then the lights flickered. The oxygen pressure dropped. The alarm flashing red, Lyra gasped, "She's dying again." Ethan grabbed the manual pump. Forcing air into the system, his mind raced. What was he missing? He stared at the broken crystals in her lungs through the scanner. That's when he realized something incredible. Her lungs weren't mechanical organs, and they were alive. Each crystal was a living structure that glowed when charged with energy. "She doesn't need air," Ethan whispered to himself. "She needs energy." He rushed to his desk. Pulling out a power cell used for medical lasers, he connected it carefully to a bioconverter tube, then ran a line to the oxygen filter. "Come on, work," he muttered, switching the power on. A soft blue light filled the room, spreading across the woman's body. The crystals in her chest began to shimmer faintly. Her breathing steadied again, this time stronger. Lyra's eyes widened. "It's working." Ethan smiled slightly. "Yes, but only for a while." He knew the power cell wouldn't last long. It was a temporary solution, maybe an hour at best. He needed to find a permanent way to rebuild those crystal lungs. But creating alien organs was forbidden. He looked at Lyra, sitting beside her mother's bed. Holding her hand, she looked so small, so fragile yet full of trust. He couldn't let her down, even if it meant breaking the law. He checked the scanners again, running simulations. Every reading screamed incompatible biology, but one idea began to form in his mind. If he could build synthetic crystals using his 3D bioprinter and charge them with nano-energy cells, he might be able to recreate the structure. It was risky, untested, and completely illegal. But Ethan had already made his choice when he opened that door. As he began preparing the lab, the base's AI voice echoed from the speakers. "Warning, Dr. Hayes. Unauthorized medical procedure detected." Ethan frowned. "Override warning. Private experiment." The AI paused, then replied, "Violation of Galactic Code 29A may result in arrest." He ignored it, connecting cables and setting up the scanner again. Outside, the wind howled louder, as if the planet itself was watching. Meanwhile, Lyra stood beside the bed, whispering in her language. The glowing marks on her hands began to pulse faintly. The air shimmered slightly around her mother's body. Ethan turned and froze. "What are you doing?" "I'm calling her spirit," Lyra said quietly, "so she doesn't leave." Ethan didn't understand, but something inside him felt warm. It was hope, fragile but alive. Minutes later, the power cell flickered again. Sarah's breathing slowed. Ethan cursed under his breath. He connected a second cell. but the energy was draining fast. He looked at the child. "I can't keep her stable forever." Lyra grabbed his sleeve, tears filling her glowing eyes. "Then build her new lungs," she whispered. "You can do it, I know you can." Ethan stared at her, realizing that this little alien believed in him more than his own people ever did. He took a deep breath and nodded. "All right, Lyra," he said, voice steady and calm. "I'll build them, but we'll have to work fast." As he turned back to the machine, the scanner lights flashed again. A faint signal appeared on the radar. Something approaching the planet's orbit. A ship large and fast, broadcasting a galactic patrol code. They were coming. Ethan didn't notice, but Lyra did. She looked up through the lab window, her small hand tightening around the oxygen capsule. She whispered one word softly, almost to herself. "They found us." The lab was silent except for the soft hum of machines. Dr. Ethan Hayes stood over the scanner, his hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. 3 sleepless nights had passed since the little alien girl, Lyra, came knocking at his door. Her mother, Sarah, was still lying on the medical bed and alive, but barely. The temporary power cells that kept her breathing were running out. Ethan knew he didn't have much time left. He stared at the holographic display showing Sarah's lungs, a complex structure of glowing crystal veins, each one pulsing weakly. Human science had never seen anything like it. Every breath she took sent soft ripples of light through her chest. Beautiful, not and heartbreaking. Lyra sat quietly beside her mother, holding her hand and whispering something in her alien tongue. Ethan looked at the child and then back at his tools. He knew what he had to do, even if it broke every rule in the galactic code. He pulled open the cover of the bioprinter, a machine that could create living tissue using nanocells. Normally, it was meant for human organs, not alien biology. But Ethan began adjusting its programming, feeding in the data from Sarah's scan. "Computer," he said, his voice tired but firm. "I need a hybrid model, crystal-based structure." "Human nanotech reinforcement," the AI responded. "Warning, cross-species design is prohibited." "I know," Ethan said sharply. "Override the restriction." There was a long pause, then the machine's soft voice replied, "Override accepted." The printer's lights flickered to life. Ethan began to design the lungs manually. He traced the complex crystal patterns with a digital stylus. His eyes burned from fatigue, but his mind was alive with focus. He mixed nanopolymer gel with micro-energy cells, trying to mimic the crystal veins that stored air and energy. Each layer shimmered in the hologram, glowing like blue fire. Come on," he whispered to himself. Every small success made him feel closer to saving her. Every small failure made his heart sink deeper. Lyra walked up beside him, clutching her glowing oxygen capsule. "Is it working?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "Not yet, but it will." She nodded, watching the floating design in the air, her eyes full of wonder. In that moment, Ethan realized something. She trusted him completely. No fear, no doubt. Just pure belief that the human scientist could save her mother. It was both comforting and terrifying. He couldn't fail her. Hours passed. The printer began creating the first layer of the artificial lungs. Thin crystal threads grew inside the chamber. Shining like tiny stars, Ethan adjusted the heat level, then connected a pulse stabilizer. But suddenly the lights dimmed and the alarm beeped. "Power drain detected," the AI said. Ethan looked at the screen. The energy cells were almost empty. The storm outside had damaged the solar grid. Without power, the entire base would shut down in minutes. Ethan ran to the backup generator and kicked the panel open. Sparks flew, smoke curling through the air. He coughed, eyes stinging. "Come on, you piece of junk," he muttered. Connecting 2 broken wires together, a flash of light shot out, and the machine roared to life again. The lab lights flickered, and the printer started moving once more. Lyra clapped her small hands, smiling faintly. Ethan smiled too, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We're not done yet." As the printer worked, Ethan's thoughts began to drift. He remembered his days at the academy, when he had dreamed of helping life beyond Earth back then. The Galactic Council told him that compassion could be dangerous, that rules were more important than feelings. Now he understood how wrong they were. He looked at Lyra and thought, if saving her mother is a crime, then I'll gladly be guilty. Finally, after hours of work, the printer stopped. Inside the chamber floated a pair of glowing artificial lungs. They were beautiful, half crystal, half-living tissue, pulsing with soft blue light. Ethan stared at them in awe. He had never built anything so delicate, so alive, Lyra whispered. They're like stars, Ethan smiled softly. Let's hope they shine long enough to save her. He carefully placed the lungs in a sterile container and carried them to Sarah's bedside. Her breathing was almost gone now, the glow in her chest faint and fading. Ethan's hands trembled as he prepared for surgery. Lyra, he said gently, you need to stay behind the glass, okay? The girl shook her head, tears forming. No, I'll stay here. Ethan hesitated but then nodded. He couldn't take away her last chance to be near her mother. The operation began. He used a nanolaser to open Sarah's chest, replacing the cracked crystals with his new creation. The machine beeped steadily as he connected each glowing vein. Sweat dripped down his face, his heart pounding. One wrong move could destroy everything. Lyra pressed her small hand against the glass. Whispering softly, Ethan didn't understand her words, but somehow they gave him strength. Finally, after endless minutes, he placed the last connector and sealed the incision. The monitor went silent for a heartbeat. Then, a soft sound filled the air, a breath deep and steady. The crystals inside Sarah's chest began to glow brighter and brighter. Her lungs were working. Ethan took a shaky step back, whispering, "It worked." It actually worked. Lyra ran to her mother's side, crying with joy. "Mom, you're breathing." Sarah's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly blue. She looked at Ethan, her lips trembling, and whispered a single word, "Thank you." Ethan smiled tiredly, but before he could speak, the base alarm began to scream. A red light flashed above the door. "Warning," the AI said. "Unauthorized genetic experiment detected. Galactic patrol inbound." Ethan's face turned pale. He looked at Lyra and her mother, both alive, both now evidence of his crime. He knew what was coming. Outside, the sound of engines filled the air as ships entered the planet's atmosphere. The human who broke the law to save an alien life was about to face the price. The sirens screamed through the lab. Red lights flashed against the silver walls, painting everything in warning colors. Dr. Ethan Hayes stood frozen beside the medical bed. His heart racing, he knew this moment would come, but not so soon. Outside the base, the sky burned with the light of incoming ships. The Galactic Patrol had found him. Lyra clung to her mother, who was now breathing smoothly for the first time in days. Sarah's new crystal lungs glowed softly beneath her skin, pulsing like stars in rhythm with her heartbeat. Ethan looked at them, alive, safe, but illegal. He had done the impossible, and for that, the law would punish him. The AI voice echoed again, calm but cold. "Dr. Ethan Hayes, Galactic Patrol units are approaching. You are ordered to cease all activity and prepare for arrest." Ethan's hand shook as he shut off the printer and covered the medical table. He had less than 10 minutes. He turned to Lyra. "Listen to me. You and your mother must hide." Lyra's glowing eyes widened. "Hide? But they'll find you." Ethan gave a faint smile. "I'll handle them. But you can't be here when they come." Sarah tried to stand but winced in pain. Her voice was weak but clear. "You saved us, Ethan, but you can't face them alone." He shook his head. "I broke the law, not you, if they see you. They'll take you too." Lyra grabbed his hand tightly, her small fingers trembling. "I don't want you to get hurt," she whispered. Ethan knelt down, looking into her glowing eyes. "Sometimes doing the right thing means getting hurt," he said softly. Then he opened a hidden hatch beneath the lab floor, leading into the maintenance tunnels. "Go, and don't come out until it's quiet." Lyra helped her mother crawl into the tunnel, her eyes still on Ethan. She whispered, "Please be safe." Ethan smiled gently. "I'll try." The hatch closed, and the lab fell silent again except for the hum of machines. Ethan took a deep breath and turned toward the door. Moments later, the sound of boots echoed through the corridor. The door slid open with a hiss. 5 galactic officers in white armor entered, their helmets reflecting the flashing lights. In front of them stood a tall alien figure in a dark robe, an inspector from the Galactic Council. "Dr. Ethan Hayes," the inspector said in a deep mechanical voice. "You are charged with biological interference and creation of illegal hybrid life forms." Ethan raised his hand slowly. "I didn't create life, I saved it." "By violating the Galactic Code," the inspector replied coldly. "You have committed a high crime." 2 officers moved forward. Scanning the room, their scanners beeped when they passed the medical bed. Traces of non-human DNA detected, one of them said. Ethan's pulse quickened. She's gone, he lied. The patient didn't survive. The inspector's eyes glowed faintly red. You are lying, human. He gestured to his officers. Search the premises. Ethan felt panic rising. He had hidden Sarah and Lyra, but the patrol scanners could detect life energy. He needed to distract them. I admit it, he said loudly. I did the experiment. I built the artificial lungs. All eyes turned toward him. Then where is the subject? The inspector demanded. Ethan took a slow step back toward the power console. Destroyed, he said. I shut down the project before you arrived. The inspector tilted his head. We shall see. He raised a hand and one of the officers moved toward the bioprinter. Ethan's eyes flicked toward the power cell. If he overloaded it, it might wipe the evidence, and maybe buy time for Lyra to escape. He pressed a hidden switch on his wristband. The generator began to hum dangerously, sparks dancing across the floor. The officers turned in alarm. Power surge detected, shouted the AI. The inspector stepped forward. What have you done? Ethan smiled faintly. Saving lives again. The explosion wasn't big, but it was bright. Energy waves rippled through the room, knocking over equipment and filling the air with smoke. When the lights returned, the machines were dead, the data erased. Ethan lay on the floor coughing, his arm bleeding. The officers moved quickly, pulling him up and locking metal cuffs around his wrists. You destroyed the evidence, one of them hissed. Ethan looked up weakly. Good. They dragged him toward the door. As they stepped outside, he glanced back one last time at the medical bed. A small glow flickered beneath the floor hatch. Lyra's eyes watching through the cracks. Ethan gave a tiny smile unseen by anyone but her. Then the door closed behind him, sealing him away. Hours passed before Lyra dared to open the hatch again. The base was quiet, smoke still curling through the air. She helped her mother climb out. Tears streaming down her small face. Where is he? She asked, her voice breaking. Sarah looked around the empty lab, then whispered. They took him. Lyra held the broken oxygen capsule close to her chest. He saved you, Mama, she said softly. And now they'll hurt him. Sarah hugged her tightly, her new lungs glowing softly in the dark. We will not forget what he did, she whispered. We will find him again. Outside the base, the galactic ships lifted into the sky. Ethan sat inside one of them, bound and silent. Through the window, he saw the red planet shrinking behind him. He didn't know what fate awaited him, but deep down he felt no regret. He had saved a life, and maybe, just maybe, that would mean something one day. The galactic cruiser drifted through the cold silence of space. Dr. Ethan Hayes sat inside a glass holding cell, his hands cuffed, his uniform torn and stained with blood. The light above him flickered softly, the hum of the engines filling the empty corridor. He had not spoken for hours outside the window. Stars moved past like distant eyes watching him. He wondered if he would ever see Row 9 again, or the little alien girl who had knocked on his door. A robotic guard stood near the cell door, its red sensors blinking. It had no face, no emotion, only the law written in its circuits. Ethan leaned back, whispering to himself, I saved her, that's all I did. The machine turned slightly. Saving life does not excuse violation of galactic law. Ethan gave a tired smile. Then maybe your laws are broken. Hours later, the ship docked at the Galactic Council station, a floating city of glass and light. Its towers glowed above a silver planet. Surrounded by thousands of smaller ships, Ethan was led through long halls filled with alien guards. He could feel their eyes on him, some full of anger, others full of quiet curiosity. He was a human scientist, a species known for breaking rules and bending laws. Now he was about to face judgment before the most powerful council in the galaxy. They brought him into the grand chamber. It was vast, circular, filled with floating platforms where alien judges sat. Each one represented a different species, insectoid, crystalline, aquatic, and more. In the center stood a bright white light, the symbol of justice. Ethan was placed beneath it, surrounded by guards. A tall being of shimmering gold stood at the highest seat, its voice deep and cold. Dr. Ethan Hayes of Earth, it said, you stand accused of creating a forbidden hybrid organ and interfering with the natural order of another species. The words echoed through the chamber. Ethan lifted his head, his voice steady. I didn't interfere with nature, he said. I saved a mother and her child. Murmurs filled the room. The golden judge raised its hand and silence returned. Do you deny creating artificial alien organs? Ethan hesitated, then said, No, I created them. Do you deny breaking the galactic code? No, he said again, but the code doesn't understand compassion. The hall went silent again. The judge leaned forward slightly. Compassion is not a defense human, it is emotion, not law. Ethan took a deep breath. Then maybe your laws forgot what it means to care. Gasps filled the air. Some of the alien judges exchanged glances. Others looked down uncomfortable. A voice from the side chamber shouted, Human arrogance, always the same. Ethan turned his head toward the voice. It came from a reptilian judge whose species had once fought wars with humans. Ethan didn't speak, he just met the alien's gaze, calm, unbroken. The golden judge spoke again. You admit your crimes. Do you have anything else to say before your sentence is decided? Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them slowly. I was alone on a dying planet, he began, when a child came to me crying that her mother couldn't breathe. I didn't see an alien, I saw someone who needed help. Maybe your laws would have told me to walk away, but I couldn't. If that makes me guilty, then I am guilty. His voice was calm but filled with quiet strength. The judges whispered among themselves. Some nodded in respect, others shook their heads. Finally, the golden judge raised its hand again. The Galactic Council has decided, it said. You are found guilty of violating the code. Your research and all related data will be erased. You will be confined to the asteroid colony of Varan 3 for life. Ethan stood still. Not surprised, not afraid, he simply bowed his head and said, Understood. The guards moved to take him away, but before they could, a loud voice echoed through the chamber. Wait! Everyone turned, the doors burst open, and two figures entered, one small and one tall. It was Lyra and her mother Sarah. Gasps filled the room as the glowing light from Sarah's chest illuminated the hall. She was alive. Proof of Ethan's success. The guards aimed their weapons. But Sarah raised her hand. Stand down, she said. Her voice calm yet powerful. The golden judge's eyes widened. You are the subject of the human's experiment. I am the mother he saved, Sarah replied. Her voice echoed like music. Without him, my daughter and I would be dead. Your law would have let us die. She turned toward Ethan, tears glimmering in her glowing eyes. This human broke your law, but he followed something greater. Mercy. The chamber fell silent. Even the guards lowered their weapons, unsure of what to do. The golden judge looked down at Ethan, then at Sarah. You live because of his crime, it said. What do you ask of this council? Sarah stepped closer to the center light. I ask that you see him not as a criminal, but as what he is, a healer. Lyra stepped forward beside her mother. Holding the broken oxygen capsule in her hands, she looked up at the council and whispered, He saved my mom. Please don't hurt him. A deep silence followed. The golden judge lowered its head. The law must stand, it said slowly. But perhaps the law must learn. Then it turned to Ethan. Your sentence will remain, but your name will not be erased, your work will be studied, your courage recorded. Ethan nodded quietly. That's enough. As the guards led him away, Lyra ran to him, grabbing his hand. Tears filled her eyes. I'll find you again. Ethan smiled faintly. I know you will. The doors closed behind him, and as the chamber lights dimmed, whispers filled the air. A human had broken the law, but in doing so, he had reminded the galaxy of something they had forgotten, that compassion was not weakness, but the strongest force in the universe. The asteroid colony of Varan 3 was a place where light came only from machines. Dark rocks stretched in every direction, glowing faintly under the hum of old mining lamps. Dr. Ethan Hayes lived alone inside a small metal shelter built from scraps. Each day felt the same, silent, cold, and endless. He repaired broken mining bots to earn food rations. At night he sat by the window and looked up at the stars. Sometimes he imagined he could still see the red sky of Row 9, and the small glowing eyes of the alien child who once knocked on his door. Months passed, the Galactic Council had forgotten him. But across the stars his name had not faded. Rumors spread of the human scientist who broke the law to save an alien life. Some called him a criminal, others called him a hero. Ethan never cared for either title. He only wished to know if Lyra and her mother were safe. One night, while repairing a broken drone, he heard a sound outside, a low humming, smooth and gentle. Not from the mining fleet. He stepped out of his shelter and froze. A silver ship was landing on the rocky plain, its lights cutting through the darkness like dawn. Dust swirled around it, glowing faint blue. Ethan's heart began to race. No one ever came to Varan 3. No one except the council guards who delivered supplies. The ship door opened with a soft hiss. 2 figures stepped out, wrapped in long cloaks that shimmered faintly under the light. Ethan squinted through the dust. Then he saw them, Lyra and Sarah. He took a step forward. Unable to believe his eyes, Lyra was taller now, her skin glowing faintly, her eyes brighter than ever. Sarah walked beside her, strong and graceful, her new crystal lungs shining softly through her chest. "Lyra?" Ethan whispered. The girl smiled and ran toward him, her small hands glowing with joy. "I told you I'd find you," she said, her voice trembling with happiness. Ethan knelt down as she hugged him tightly. For a moment he couldn't speak, his throat too tight with emotion. Sarah approached, her steps calm and full of quiet dignity. "You look tired, Dr. Hayes," she said softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "Prison life isn't much of a vacation." Sarah's eyes glowed with sadness. "You shouldn't be here. I broke the law," he said simply. "I deserve to be," Sarah shook her head. "You followed something higher than the law." She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small crystal. It glowed gently, shifting colors like liquid light. "This is called a life crystal," she said. "It holds the essence of healing from our world." Ethan looked at it, mesmerized by its glow. "What does it do?" he asked. Lyra smiled. "It gives life, no matter the species, no matter the wound." Ethan frowned. "You can't give me this. It's sacred, isn't it?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes, it is. That's why it belongs to you." Ethan hesitated, his hands trembling as she placed the crystal in his palm. It was warm, almost alive, humming softly. He could feel something moving inside it, not energy, but emotion, Sarah continued. "Because of you, our people have changed. The galactic law is being rewritten. Your act made the council see what compassion means." Ethan looked down, speechless. He had spent months in exile, believing his actions were forgotten. Now he realized they had started a wave across the stars. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes shining with tears. "My mother says we can help others now," she said. "Like you helped us." Ethan smiled, his eyes soft and tired. "Then I didn't waste my life." Sarah placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "You gave us a future, now let us give you peace." Ethan looked around the dark, rocky plain. "I can't leave this place," he said quietly. "The sentence still stands." Sarah smiled faintly. "Perhaps not anymore." The ship's lights flickered, and a holographic symbol appeared in the air, the crest of the Galactic Council. A message began to play. "Dr. Ethan Hayes," said the familiar voice of the Golden Judge. "The Council recognizes your act as one of mercy beyond law. Your confinement on Varan 3 is hereby lifted. You are free to go." Ethan stared at the message in disbelief. He looked at Sarah, who smiled. "You are no longer a prisoner, Dr. Hayes. You are a bridge between worlds." Ethan's heart pounded as he looked toward the stars. For the first time in years, he could breathe without the weight of guilt. Lyra took his hand, pulling him toward the ship. "Come with us," she said eagerly. "There are people who want to meet you. People who need your help." Ethan hesitated. Glancing back at the shelter where he had lived so long, it was quiet, empty, full of broken machines and lonely nights. He smiled. "I think I've had enough of silence." They boarded the ship together as it rose into the sky. Ethan looked down at the asteroid, the dark rock where his punishment had turned into peace. Above him, the stars burned brighter than ever. He held the life crystal close, feeling its gentle pulse. Maybe, he thought, this was never about punishment. Maybe it was about understanding what being human truly meant. He turned to Lyra and said softly, "You gave me hope again." Lyra grinned. "No, you gave it to us first." The ship vanished into the vast ocean of stars. Behind them, the cold asteroid faded into darkness. Ahead of them, the galaxy glowed, full of new worlds, new lives and new chances. And in the quiet hum of the engines, the crystal in Ethan's hand pulsed gently, a living symbol of unity between human and alien. A reminder that one act of kindness can change not just a life, but an entire galaxy. Years passed, the galaxy was no longer the same. New laws were written, not in ink, but in compassion. Across hundreds of worlds, schools and medical centers carried one name, Ethan Hayes. To some, he was a scientist. To others, a criminal who disobeyed, but to most, he was something greater. The human who reminded the universe that mercy was stronger than law. Ethan's ship drifted through the bright nebula near the twin stars of Arendor. He sat in the cockpit, now older, his hair silvered with time. The life crystal hung around his neck, glowing softly against his chest. It had become more than a gift, it was a symbol. A living light that never faded. Lyra sat beside him, now a young woman, her voice full of warmth. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes, but I think I found something better." Lyra tilted her head. "What's that?" He looked out at the stars and said softly, "Family." They had been traveling from world to world, helping colonies heal from diseases and disasters, using the hybrid crystal technology Ethan had created. Now it wasn't forbidden, it was celebrated. The Galactic Council had turned his old research into a universal healing program. It could save both human and alien life. It could bridge species that had once feared each other. And at the heart of every healing center, a small plaque read, "Inspired by the human who broke the law to save a life." But even heroes grow tired. Ethan's body was weaker now, his breath shorter, his voice quieter still. His eyes held the same spark, the same fire that had pushed him to save Lyra's mother years ago. Sarah, graceful and calm as ever, entered the cockpit carrying a cup of steaming liquid. "You should rest, Dr. Hayes," she said kindly. Ethan chuckled softly. "If I rest, who'll fix the engine?" Sarah smiled. "We can fix it, you've taught us enough." Ethan looked at her and said quietly, "Then I've done my job." The ship landed on a green moon covered in mist. Children of different species ran across the fields, their laughter echoing through the air. They weren't afraid of each other. They played together freely. Ethan stood at the edge of a cliff. Watching them, Lyra stood beside him, the wind brushing her silver hair. "This world was dying once," she said softly, "but now it breathes again because of your design." Ethan smiled gently. "Not because of me, because of us." He looked at her and added, "You believed when no one else did that night." The stars above the moon shimmered brighter than usual. The air was calm, the sound of distant rivers mixing with the hum of alien insects. Ethan sat outside by the fire, the life crystal glowing beside him. Lyra sat nearby, sketching in her journal, drawing the constellations above. She suddenly looked up and asked, "Ethan, do you ever regret what you did?" Ethan thought for a long time, then smiled. "No," he said softly, "because if I hadn't broken the law, I never would have met you." Lyra laughed gently. "Then I'm glad you did," the fire crackled, painting their faces in orange light. Ethan looked up at the stars again. Once they had felt cold and distant, unreachable. Now they felt alive. Familiar, as if the universe itself had forgiven him. He whispered quietly, "Maybe humans aren't meant to conquer the stars. Maybe we're meant to teach them how to care." Days later, a message arrived from the Galactic Council. An invitation for Ethan to return to the capital for a ceremony. They called it the Unity Accord, a celebration marking the first official alliance between humans and over 100 alien species. Ethan hesitated at first, but Lyra smiled. "You started this. You should see it." So he went. When they arrived, millions gathered at the great plaza of the Galactic Station. Different beings from every corner of the galaxy stood side by side. As Ethan walked across the stage, the crowd went silent. The same golden judge who had once sentenced him to exile now stood before him, but this time its voice was soft, respectful. "Dr. Ethan Hayes," it said, "once we called you a criminal. Today, we call you the man who taught the stars compassion." The entire hall erupted in applause. Lyra and Sarah stood proudly beside him, their eyes shining. Ethan felt tears gather in his tired eyes. He lifted the life crystal and held it high. Its light spread across the chamber, glowing brighter than any torch. "This," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "isn't mine alone. It belongs to everyone who chooses kindness over fear, who sees life before law, and who believes that mercy can build what hatred never could." The hall went silent again. Then the crowd began to chant his name, softly, respectfully, Ethan Hayes, the human who changed the stars for the first time. Ethan didn't feel small in the galaxy. He felt connected to it, part of its heart, not its edge. Later that night, he stood by the observation deck, watching the nebula swirl outside. Lyra came to his side and whispered, You did it, Ethan smiled. No, we did it. He placed a hand on her shoulder. When I first met you, you were just a scared little girl at my door. Lyra laughed softly. And you were the strange human who broke every rule to save us. Ethan smiled. I guess some rules are meant to be broken. The stars outside shimmered like living eyes, and as the ship drifted through them, the life crystal pulsed one last time, soft, warm, eternal. A reminder across galaxies that one man's act of compassion had rewritten destiny. And somewhere among the shining worlds, a quiet voice echoed. Sometimes, one human heart can change the stars.